addition to answering the questions and seeing how you can use a little bit of algebra, because algebra is going to be, you know, something that makes your work way more efficient. And we are going to first look at the first problem. So read for me, Aiden.
Exactly 187 feet of fencing is used to surround the garden below.
Right, and so when we see the word surround, what does that mean to you, Eliza?
Well, if it's surrounding, it means it's going to be the perimeter and not the area.
The perimeter, not the area. Right. Hi there. So, right, you're going to do perimeter. So, if you did perimeter with the W's, you would say that you have a W and a W and a 24.5, and a 24.5. And we also know, Zane, what's that perimeter equal to, according to the reading? How much is it?
It's 187.
It's 187, right? So we could, instead of doing our equation there, we can put in what we know. So like we know the perimeter is 187, and we could also add these. So Riley, what do you get when you add those?
When you add those two, you get 49.
Good. Okay, so that tells us something important. So right here, it tells me that I know that if I can figure out what the whatever those two W's are, they have to be together. They have to add with 49 to get 187. So how do I figure those W's out, Brandon? What operation would I have to use?
You have to use subtraction and then division.
Yeah, you have to go backwards because we're missing the W, so we have to undo this addition. So that's why we practiced inverse operations on that other note catcher. And this is where I want to have you guys start thinking of your work as some scratch work that you do off to the side. You don't have to do every little thing in this space because it's hard to read. So off to the side, you're going to do subtraction like Brendan said. So when I subtract that, Lily, what do I get? So I should do some borrowing, right?
138.
Correct. And then I'm going to, what I know that is that if I have 138, I know this 138, and I'm hoping you guys can kind of agree with me, that has to be what I need to make those two W's add up to. Does that make sense? You guys get that? Yeah? So it's kind of that's like beginning algebra, just sort of saying, I know the two W's have to be 138. So what else did he say, Isaac? What's the next step? Well, I can't yet, because what do I need?
You need to divide 138 into 2.
Yeah, I need to take that 138 and divide it into 2 because it's both W's, and I only want to know what one W is. So, because that's what the question was asking me, what is the width? And so, when I do that, what do I get, George?
You get 69.
Yep. So I know that this is 69 and the units are what?
Units are feet.
And I can use a little tick mark. So Kate, can you set up now a perimeter equation for me? Or an area equation? Because problem 11 is asking me to find the area. So what's my area?
So the one with the width is 69.
Yeah, so I have 69.
So it would be 69 times the length, which is 24.
Right. And then you guys can finish that work yourself when you go back and correct if you missed that. Okay, so read the next one for me, Brooke.
It fits exactly 155 square feet of carpet to cover the floor in the diagram below.
Okay, so we have square feet and we also have the word covered. So what does that tell you instead of surround?
So
It's an area problem, right? So how many people thought it was a perimeter problem? A few, yeah,
I did.
yeah. So if it were an area problem, Aiden, using that 15.5, I'd have to do like,
Accidentally did 155 minus 31.
yeah, but if it was an area problem, it'd be 15 times this missing length value. Okay, what else do I know? Do I know the area?
No.
Read the problem.
Yes.
So how can I put that in my next step? Where would I put that value? Under what letter?
A.
Right, because it's the area, so we would say 155 is equal to 15. And in this case, it might be easier for some of you to go to decimals here, but it's not required. So what's the opposite thing then, Aiden? This Aiden back here.
Well, 10.
Okay, so what's the opposite operation?
Oh.
Division, right? So if I'm trying to find a missing value, like this L, and the operation in my equation is multiply, my scratch work has to undo that operation. So what am I going to divide over here, Aiden?
155 divided by 15.
Right, 15.5 divides into 155. Or just like we said, 155 divided by 15.5. And then from the beginning of the year, we have to move the decimal and then bring it up. Okay? So Rhea, how many times does 155 go into 155?
1.
Yeah. So it's not a very hard division problem. And then how many times does it go into 0? 0. So that's why we figured out that the length has to be 10. So 10 feet. Riley?
Why would you divide it by 15? Why not 31?
Because for area, you always do length times width. You don't add the widths together.
I get it.
Okay.
Wait.
Sorry. Maybe if I made an easier problem up, something similar to that, like just really briefly, this is like it's not this problem, but if I said the area of this rectangle was like 80, and I knew that this was 10, and you had to find this value here, or we'll call it L again. You could see with mental math the answer, I think. What times 10 makes 80?
8.
So, do you agree with that, Zori?
Yes.
So, if you look at it with the algebra, you would say 80 is equal to 10 times the missing value. And since the operation was multiply, you would do the opposite to get the answer. You would say, I'm going to take my 80 and I'm going to go backwards and divide by that 10 to get my final answer, even though you could do it with mental math.
Wait, is that problem?
No, this is like a simpler problem.
Oh.
You know, sometimes looking at a problem with easier numbers can help you understand a problem with harder numbers. So can you see this with easier numbers?
Yes.
And so instead of having 80 and 10, I have 155 and 15.5, but it's still going backwards, so I still do a division problem. So one of the big strategies in math is solve an easier problem. And if you could solve an easier problem, that sometimes helps you solve a problem with messier numbers. Okay, so Isaac, what's the equation for the perimeter then? Like, what am I going to do now that I know L? How can I set up my equation?
31 plus 1.
Can you break it down a little more?
15.5 plus 15.5.
Yeah, 15.5. You can even do it times 2, but just so people can see all the dimensions. What else? Plus 10 plus 10. Or you might like to write it as 2 times 15.5 plus 2 times 10. And when you work that out, that's where he's getting that 31. So that's where the answer came from, 51 feet.
Oh, I get.
So you have another homework sheet like this tonight,
Oh,
okay?
is it the next page?
No, it's not. Okay, let's talk about this last one. I noticed just walking out around the room, people were able to use just mental math strategies to get the answer to this. So an area of, it says sketch and label a rectangle with dimensions to meet the criteria below. This one has an area of 100 and a perimeter of 40. And I picked these numbers because I was hoping you could just use mental math to do that.
I use mental math.
But these numbers are a little bit more hard work over there.
You can still use mental math.
You can. But I'm wondering if you remember, like, without mental math, the beginning of the year when we looked at factor pairs. Do you remember each of these factor pairs represented a rectangle?
That's what we're. Wait, what? You just-
Right, like 1 times 100 would make a really long skinny rectangle,
Oh,
joined by 100. Well, what would the perimeter of that be? Way off of 40, right? 202. So we would say that's not going to work. And then if we did a 2 by 50, it would be like a little bit different shape. What would the perimeter of that be?
104.
Yes, 104. It is okay if you just could see this answer, but there are people that can't, and so by looking at your factor pairs, that would be your strategy. Did you hear Eliza's question? What if you could just see the answer? In this case, it didn't ask you to defend it with the strategy, but if you can't get an answer right away, then a strategy is really important. So, Haley?
If you did 40, I was going to use, and then 47 meters and 10, and then 10 sides.
Well, if you look at that, you didn't meet the requirements because it said the area has to be 100, and you did a perimeter of 100.
Oh.
Because this is area is equal to 10 times 40, and that equals 400 square units. Okay? That's why that's not a solution.
I say 4 by 20.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's practice over here. Suppose you didn't just see it like Eliza did. Start with your factor pairs. 1 times 72. 2 times what?
36.
36. Okay, keep going, Zane. Let's see. 3. Do you remember that little trick? 3 goes into 36 how many times?
12 times.
What's 12 times 2?
24.
Remember that?
I don't remember that. I don't remember that.
You know?
I don't
What?
think we ever did that.
Yeah, oh, we totally did.
Oh.
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
we did.
We did.
You did. Watch. If I put a little writing on here. 4 goes into 24 how many times?
6 times.
What's 6 times 3?
18.
4 times 18 is 72.
Oh, that's confusing. That's confusing.
That's not
Does 5 go into 72? Okay, let's try it again. How many times does 6 go into 18?
3 times.
What's 3 times 4?
12.
6 times 12 is 72.
Wait, so I have a question.
Yeah.
So would the number that you put, that goes into it, does it have to be put that second and third later? So like, you couldn't.
No. For example, I could have said 6 goes into 36 6 times, and 6 times 2 still gives me 12.
So it has to go into the number.
It has to go into something.
Okay.
It's a good strategy to help you find all your factor pairs. So 7 doesn't go into this because, you know, 7 times 10 is 70. So, but like for 8, if you could find a number that 8 goes into, like which one of them? Yeah.
Like 9.
Yeah. But what does 8 go into? 8 is.
18.
No.
Oh, wow.
It goes into 24, right? Rio, what's 20? So if 8 goes into 24, right? How many times? And what's 3 times 3? 9. So it's just a strategy, it's not required, but it helps you find your factor pairs. Because then when you look at your factor pairs, if you think about it, I mean, just think about it. Obviously, 1 by 72 is not going to give you a perimeter of 34, is it?
But I know what will.
I know you do. But there were some people that didn't understand the problem, so let's make sure that we clarify that. So if you didn't understand the problem, you're looking for something that multiplies to give you 72, but adds all 4 sides up to give 34. So that couldn't work. So we would go down our list, and we really want smaller values. Okay, so just one more before we get it to straight right. Like, what if I thought it was a 3 by 24? What would this perimeter be?
It would be.
What's 3 and 24?
That's 27.
Right, and double 27.
27. That'd be 54.
So it's still not 34, right?
56.
You guys understand what you were supposed to be doing there?
Yeah.
Better? So Aiden, what was the answer supposed to
9
be?
by 8.
9 by 8. And if you did 9 by 8, 8 and 8 make 16. And when you add these together, 9 and 9 make 18. You get 34. Or you could do this, right? You could just add these two and double. 9 plus 8 is 17. Double 17. And you get the answer. So tonight, that's your goal, is to go back and try to execute problems like this with more perfection. Okay, good work, good equation, better understanding, and that's what we're gonna shoot for tonight.